I've spent half my life looking into the eyes of people who think they can lie their way out of a burning room. As a cop in Chicago, I walked into homes where the air was thick with the kind of secrets that rot a family from the inside out. I've seen it all, or at least I thought I had, until I started this show. People ask me all the time why I'm so angry, why I can't just sit back and let people talk. It's because I don't have time for the games. I don't have time for the he said, she said nonsense when there's a victim sitting right in front of me, bleeding out emotionally, while the person who stabbed them in the back is looking for a way to blame the knife. I've developed a sense for it. It's a gut feeling that starts in the pit of my stomach when I walk out onto that stage and see a man sitting there looking at his shoes, trying to figure out which lie is going to save his skin today. You can see it in the way they won't meet my gaze. They know what I represent. I represent the truth that they've been running from, and on my stage, there's nowhere left to run. I don't care about being liked. I don't care about being the nice guy. My job isn't to make you feel comfortable while you're destroying the people who are supposed to mean the most to you. My job is to protect the person who has been betrayed. If that makes me the bad guy in your story, I can live with that. I've lived with worse. The case today involves a man named Mark, his wife Sarah, and Sarah's sister, Jessica. When I first read the file back in my dressing room, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. This wasn't just a regular affair. This was a violation of the most sacred trust there is. Sarah and Mark had been married for 6 years. They have a life together. They have dreams. And then there's Jessica, the younger sister. Sarah told my producers that she invited Jessica to live with them because Jessica was going through a hard time. She wanted to help her sister get back on her feet. She opened her home, her heart, and her life to her own flesh and blood, only to have that sister turn around and start a secret life with her husband. Mark denies it. He says Sarah's crazy, that she's paranoid, that he would never touch her sister. He says he loves his wife, but I've heard those words before. I've heard them from men who were caught red-handed. The way Sarah described the situation to my team, it broke my heart. She talked about finding a stray earring under the guest bed that didn't belong to her, about the way the room would go silent when she walked in, and about the look in her husband's eyes that had gone cold over the last 6 months. She's not here for a payday or for fame. She's here because she's desperate to know if the two people she trusts most in this world have turned into her worst enemies. I walked onto that stage today, and the tension was so thick I could practically taste it. Sarah was already there, sitting in one of the chairs, her hands shaking so hard she had to tuck them under her thighs. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. When I looked at her, I didn't see a woman looking for a fight. I saw a woman looking for a reason to keep going. Then I looked over at the wings where Mark was waiting to come out. He was pacing, adjusting his shirt, looking at the monitors, with this smirk that he thought looked like confidence, but to me, it looked like a mask. I've seen that smirk on 1,000 guys who thought they were the smartest person in the room. They think they can charm me. Or maybe they think if they stick to their story long enough, the truth will just give up and go away. It doesn't work like that with me. I've sat in interrogation rooms with people who committed far worse crimes than adultery, and they all had the same tells. Mark has them all. I called Mark out to the stage, and the second he sat down, the atmosphere changed. He didn't look at Sarah. He looked at me, trying to give me a firm nod, man to man. I didn't return it. I don't give man-to-man respect to people who might be sleeping with their wife's sister. I sat down, leaned in, and I just watched him for a second. I wanted him to feel the weight of the silence. I wanted him to understand that this isn't a game and this isn't a joke. I asked him a simple question. Mark, why are we here? He started giving me this rehearsed speech about how Sarah has been stressed and how she's imagining things because her sister moved in, and it's been a big adjustment for everyone. He sounded like a politician, not a husband. He kept using words like misunderstanding and closeness. I stopped him right there. I told him I didn't want to hear his vocabulary lesson. I wanted to know if he was sleeping with Jessica. He looked me right in the eye, or at least he tried to, and said, "No, Steve, absolutely not. I love my wife." Sarah made a sound then, a small, choked off sob that seemed to tear through the studio. She looked at him and asked him how he could say that when she found his phone unlocked with messages to her sister that were anything but brotherly. Mark didn't even flinch. He told her she was taking things out of context, that he and Jessica were just talking about how to help Sarah because she was becoming unstable. That's the oldest trick in the book, gaslighting. You make the victim feel like they're the one who's losing their mind, so they stop looking at what you're doing. I've seen it a million times. I looked at Sarah, and I could see the doubt flickering in her eyes, that terrible what if that keeps victims trapped in a cycle of abuse and lies. She wants to believe him. Every part of her wants to believe that her husband and her sister haven't betrayed her in the worst way possible. But her gut is telling her something else, and that's why she's here. She's here to see if my polygraph is going to confirm her worst nightmare or give her her life back. Then we brought Jessica out. If Mark was the arrogant one, Jessica was the defensive one. She came out with her arms crossed, her face set in a scowl, acting like she was the one who had been wronged. She didn't look at her sister. She didn't look at Mark. She sat as far away from Sarah as possible. I asked her point blank, Jessica, are you having an affair with your sister's husband? She laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was that nervous, high-pitched sound people make when they're caught and they're trying to act like the accusation is too ridiculous to even consider. She called Sarah crazy and ungrateful. She said Sarah was jealous of the bond she had with Mark. That word bond, it's a dangerous word in a situation like this. I looked at Sarah and I saw the betrayal hit her all over again. Her own sister, the person she shared a childhood with, was sitting 3 feet away calling her crazy for noticing that her husband was spending more time in the guest room than in their own bed. I've seen families destroyed by a lot of things. Drugs, violence, money. But there is something particularly disgusting about this kind of betrayal. It's a double cross that leaves a person with nowhere to turn. If you can't trust your husband and you can't trust your sister, who do you have left? Sarah is sitting there on that stage, and she is completely alone. She's surrounded by an audience. She's got me sitting in front of her, but she is in a vacuum of pain. I can feel it coming off her in waves. And Mark and Jessica, they're sitting there like they're the victims of a conspiracy. They're glancing at each other when they think, I'm not looking. It's a split-second look, a shared secret, a silent communication that tells me everything I need to know before the results even come out. They think they're being subtle. They're not. I've spent decades reading body language, and those two are screaming their guilt without saying a word. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the three of them. This is the part of the job that never gets easier. People think I enjoy the yelling, the throwing of the chairs, the drama. I don't. What I enjoy is the moment the truth comes out and a liar realizes they have no more cards to play. I enjoy seeing the victim realize that they aren't crazy, that their instincts were right, and that they have the power to walk away. But the cost of that truth is usually the total destruction of a family. Right now, Sarah's holding on to a thin thread of hope. She's hoping I'm going to open that envelope and tell her that Mark is telling the truth. She's hoping she can go home and apologize for being paranoid and that things can go back to how they were. But I've seen the results, I know what's in that envelope, and I know that in about 5 minutes, Sarah's world is going to end. I look at Mark and I see a man who thinks he's bulletproof. He's sitting there, legs crossed, trying to look relaxed, but I could see the pulse in his neck jumping. I've seen that pulse on guys sitting in the back of a squad car, the ones who think if they just keep talking, they can weave a web big enough to catch everyone's suspicion and bury it. He starts talking about how he's a good man and how he's been the provider for this family. I've heard that one before. Being a provider doesn't give you a license to destroy your wife's soul. He looks me in the eye and tells me that Jessica's like a sister to him too. He says he was just being supportive because Jessica was going through a breakup and she needed a male figure to talk to. I stop him right there. I don't want to hear the word supportive come out of his mouth ever again. There is a line between being a brother-in-law and being a predator, and Mark has been dancing on that line since the moment Jessica moved into that house. I asked him about the late nights. Sarah told my producers that she'd wake up at 2 in the morning and find the living room empty, but she'd hear whispering coming from the guest room. Mark looks at me and says they were just watching movies or talking about life. He says Sarah is a light sleeper and she's prone to anxiety attacks, implying that her memory of those nights is just a symptom of her mental state. That's when I turn to Jessica. She's sitting there with this smug look on her face, like she's won a prize that nobody else wants. I ask her how she can sit 3 feet away from her sister, the woman who shared her toys with her, the woman who protected her when they were kids, and lied to her face. Jessica doesn't even blink. She tells me that Sarah has always been the dramatic one. She says Sarah is jealous because she and Mark get along better. The coldness in her voice sends a chill down my spine. I've dealt with criminals who had more remorse for a stranger they robbed than this girl has for her own sister. She starts describing how Sarah doesn't understand Mark and how Mark needs someone who listens. It's the classic justification of a homewrecker. They convince themselves that they're doing the person a favor by taking their partner away. They tell themselves that the marriage was already broken, so it doesn't matter if they kick the last few bricks out from under it. But I look at Sarah, and I don't see a broken marriage. I see a woman who is fighting for her home, unaware that the enemy was already inside the gates. Sarah starts crying again, but this time it's different. It's not the quiet, defeated sob from before. It's the sound of someone who is finally realizing that the people she loves are capable of pure evil. She looks at Jessica and asks, "How could you? I let you in, I fed you, I gave you a place to stay when you had nothing. How could you take him?" Jessica just rolls her eyes. She actually rolls her eyes at her sister's pain. I feel the anger boiling up in me, that old cop anger that tells me it's time to stop being polite. I stand up and walk over to Mark. I get right in his space. I want him to feel how small he really is. I ask him if he's ever seen what betrayal does to a person long term. I tell him that he's not just cheating, he's murdering Sarah's ability to trust anyone ever again. He's teaching her that the person she sleeps next to and the person she grew up with are both liars. He tries to pull back, tries to give me that, hey, let's be reasonable look, but there is nothing reasonable about what he's done. The audience is starting to get loud now. They can see what I see. They see the way Mark and Jessica's stories are starting to fray at the edges. 1 minute, Mark says they were never alone in the guest room, and the next minute, Jessica says they spent hours in there venting about Sarah's behavior. They can't even keep their lies straight for 20 minutes. I've spent years watching people try to coordinate their stories, and it always fails because the truth is a solid object and a lie is just smoke. Eventually, the smoke clears and you're left standing there holding nothing. I tell Mark that I have the results of the polygraph in my hand. I haven't opened them yet, but I give him one last chance. I tell him, "Mark, if you come clean right now, maybe you can save a shred of your dignity. If you wait for me to read this paper, it's over. There's no coming back." He looks at the envelope, then he looks at Jessica. For a split second, I see the mask slip. I see the fear. He knows what's in there, but his ego is too big. He shakes his head and says, "Steve, I'm telling you the truth. That machine is wrong if it says anything else. I've heard that 1,000 times too. The machine is wrong. The guy who ran the test didn't like me. I was nervous because of the lights. It's all noise. Dan Ribicoff is the best in the business, and he doesn't make mistakes. If that machine says you're lying, you're lying." I look at Sarah, and I tell her to prepare herself. I hate this part. I hate being the one to deliver the blow that's going to shatter a person's world. But she needs to know. She can't keep living in this house of mirrors where everything she sees is a distortion. I tell her that I'm going to read the results now. The studio goes dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Even the cameramen are holding their breath. This is the moment where the he said, she said ends and the reality begins. I open the envelope. I take my time because I want Mark to feel every second of that silence. I want him to feel the weight of what he's about to lose. I look at the paper, and then I look at him. He's trying to maintain that smirk, but his lips are twitching. He's terrified, and he should be. I look at the question. Did you have any form of sexual contact with your wife's sister, Jessica? Mark's answer was no. I look at the result. It's in big, bold letters. It's not a surprise to me, but it's going to be a grenade in the middle of this stage. I look at Sarah, and I feel this deep sense of pity for her. She's looking at me like I'm a judge about to read a death sentence. In a way, I am. I'm reading the death sentence of her marriage and her relationship with her sister. I look back at Mark and I say, "Mark, you're a liar." The audience explodes. Sarah lets out a scream that I'll never forget. It wasn't a cry, it was a howl of pure, unadulterated agony. She stands up and tries to get to Mark, but my security guys are already there, holding her back, protecting her from making a mistake she'll regret. Mark doesn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He immediately starts the test is wrong routine. He's shouting at me, saying I'm trying to ruin his life for ratings. I don't even respond to that. I don't have to. The truth is sitting right there on that piece of paper. I turn to Jessica, who is now sitting there with her head down, trying to hide her face. I ask her, are you proud of yourself? You destroyed your sister for a man who lied to her for 6 years. What makes you think he won't lie to you? She doesn't answer. She doesn't have an answer. She's just a girl who wanted what her sister had, and she didn't care who she had to hurt to get it. I look at the two of them, Mark and Jessica, and I see two people who deserve each other. They're both hollow. They're both built on a foundation of deceit. I've seen this play out before. They'll try to stay together for a while just to prove that it was all worth it. But the same poison that allowed them to betray Sarah will eventually turn on them. You can't build a healthy relationship on the ashes of someone else's life. It doesn't work. The guilt, the suspicion, the knowledge of what the other person is capable of, it will eat them alive. I tell Mark to get off my stage. I don't want him in my sight for another second. He starts to argue, but I'm not in the mood for it. I tell him to get out, and I tell him to take Jessica with him. They belong in the trash, not on my stage. The way Mark looks at me after the truth hits the floor is something I'll never get used to. It's that desperate, cornered animal stare. He's looking for an exit, but the exit is blocked by the reality of what he's done. He's still trying to mouth the words, it's not true, but the sound won't come out right. It's a pathetic, dry rasp. I've seen men in interrogation rooms hold on to a lie until the very second the handcuffs click shut, and even then, they're looking for a loophole. Mark is that kind of guy. He thinks if he just denies it one more time with enough conviction, he can rewrite history. But I'm standing right here, and I won't let him. I've got the facts in my hand, and more importantly, I've got the broken heart of his wife sitting 2 feet away from me. That's a weight he can't lift. Sarah is inconsolable. The sound she's making, it's the sound of a person who has had their entire foundation ripped out from under them. Think about it. This isn't just a husband who went to a bar and made a mistake with a stranger. This is the man she built a life with, sleeping with the girl she grew up with. It's a double-layered betrayal that poisons every memory she has. Every Christmas, every birthday, every family dinner they've had for the last year, it's all tainted now. She's looking at Jessica, and I can see the why burning in her eyes. Why her? Why my sister? Jessica won't even look up. She's staring at the floor, picking at a loose thread on her jeans like she's bored. That's the part that gets me. The lack of empathy is chilling. I've seen cold-blooded criminals show more emotion when they get caught than this girl is showing for her own sister's pain. I turn my attention back to Mark because he's the one who's supposed to be the protector of this home. I ask him, Mark, do you realize what you've done? Do you have any idea the level of damage you've caused? He starts with the excuses again. He says things were bad at home, that Sarah was always complaining, and that Jessica was the only one who understood him. I don't want to hear it. I've heard every unhappy husband story in the book. If you're unhappy, you get a divorce. You don't go into the next room and sleep with your wife's sister. That's not unhappiness, that's malice. That's a choice to be as cruel as humanly possible. I tell him that he's a coward. A real man faces his problems. A real man respects the woman he married. A real man doesn't treat his family like a buffet where he can just pick and choose what he wants regardless of who gets hurt. Then I look at Jessica. I can't let her sit there in silence like she's some innocent bystander. I walk over to her and I ask her if she thinks she's won something. Is he yours now, Jessica? Is this what you wanted? To have him all to yourself while your sister's life lies in pieces on the floor? She looks up then, and there's this flash of defiance in her eyes. She says, we love each other, Steve. You can't help who you love. I've heard that line 1,000,000 times, and every time it makes me want to throw a chair. Love isn't a license to destroy people. Love doesn't require you to be a snake in the grass. If you loved him and he loved you, you should have had the decency to be honest about it before you spent months sneaking around behind Sarah's back. That's not love, that's a sickness. It's a shared delusion between two people who are too selfish to care about anyone but themselves. Sarah stands up, and for a second, I think she's going to hit one of them. My security team moves in closer, but she just stands there, shaking. She looks at Mark and says, I gave you everything. I supported you when you lost your job. I was there for you when your father died. And this is how you pay me back? With her? Mark tries to reach out to her, tries to touch her arm, and I've never seen a person recoil so fast. It was like he was made of fire. She couldn't stand the thought of his skin touching hers. That's the moment the marriage truly ended. It wasn't the polygraph result, it was that physical reaction of pure disgust. She sees him for exactly what he is now, a stranger, a dangerous stranger who lived in her house and pretended to love her while he was violating her trust in the most intimate way possible. I take a breath and try to center the room. I've seen this go off the rails 100 times, and I need Sarah to hear what I have to say. I tell her, Sarah, look at me. This is not your fault. Do you hear me? You didn't do this. You weren't a bad wife. You weren't crazy for suspecting them. You were the only one in that house with any integrity. I want her to understand that the gaslighting is over. All those months of them making her feel like she was losing her mind, all those times they whispered behind her back and then laughed in her face when she asked what was wrong, that's all done. She has the truth now. It's a painful truth, a heavy truth, but it's the only thing that can set her free. I turn back to the two of them, the happy couple. I tell them that they deserve the life they're about to have. Because here's the reality. If he'll cheat with you, he'll cheat on you. And if she'll betray her own blood, she'll betray a man she's known for 5 minutes. They've built their love on a foundation of lies and betrayal, and that foundation is made of sand. Eventually, the novelty will wear off. Eventually, Mark will look at Jessica and he'll see the face of the woman who helped him destroy his life. And Jessica will look at Mark and wonder when he's going to start looking at someone else's sister the way he looked at her. That's the happily ever after for people like them. They get to live in a world where they can never truly trust each other because they both know exactly what the other person is capable of. I look at the audience and I see people crying. I see people nodding. Everyone in this room knows right from wrong, except for the two people sitting on that other couch. It's a strange thing how some people can be born without that moral compass. They just wander through life taking what they want, leaving a trail of wreckage behind them, and they're always shocked when someone finally calls them out on it. Mark is still trying to talk to me, still trying to explain his side. I tell him to shut up. I'm done listening to him. There is no side to this. There is the truth, and then there's the garbage he's spewing. I've spent 30 years dealing with guys like him, and they all think they're special. They all think their circumstances are different. They're not. He's just another guy who couldn't keep his pants zipped and didn't have the guts to be honest. I tell Sarah that she needs to leave, not just this stage, but that house. She needs to cut these people out of her life like a cancer. You can't heal while the person who stabbed you is still holding the knife. I tell her that her sister, the person who used to be her sister, is gone. That girl on the couch is a stranger. You don't owe her anything. You don't owe Mark anything. The only person you owe right now is yourself. You owe it to yourself to walk out of here with your head held high, knowing that you were the only one who kept your promises. I see a little bit of strength come back into her eyes when I say that. It's small, but it's there. That's the start of the recovery. It's going to be a long road, and there are going to be nights where she feels like she can't breathe, but she's better off today than she was yesterday because today she knows the truth. I look at Mark, and I see a man who is physically present but morally absent. He's standing there now, hands in his pockets, trying to shrug it off like he just got a parking ticket instead of blowing up a woman's entire world. He looks at me and says, Steve, people make mistakes. We're just human. That word mistake is the most overused word in the history of this show. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. A mistake is taking the wrong exit on the highway. Sleeping with your wife's sister for months, lying about it to her face, making her feel like she's losing her mind, and then coming on national television to try and humiliate her further. That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle. That's a character flaw so deep that I don't think there's enough therapy in the world to fix it. I tell him that, and he just stares at me with those cold, empty eyes. He doesn't get it because he doesn't want to get it. To get it would mean he'd have to admit he's a bad guy, and men like Mark always want to be the hero of their own story, even when they're the villain. I turn to the audience, and I can see the disgust on their faces. It's a mirror of what I'm feeling. I tell them, and I tell the people watching at home, that this is why I do what I do. People think this show is about the trashy side of life, but it's not. It's about the struggle for the truth in a world that's becoming increasingly comfortable with lies. It's about standing up for the Sarahs of the world who are being bullied by the people they love. I look at Mark and I say, you think you're a man? A man protects his wife. A man honors his vows. You're just a guy who's afraid of his own shadow, hiding behind your sister-in-law because you're too weak to handle a real partnership. He doesn't like that. He starts to get aggressive, steps toward me, and I don't move an inch. I've had bigger and tougher guys than him try to intimidate me. It doesn't work. I tell him to sit back down before he does something that's going to get him escorted out in zip ties. Then I look at Jessica. I can't wrap my head around the sisterhood part of this. I tell her, Jessica, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen people steal from their parents. I've seen people lie to their kids. But there is a special place for a sister who does what you did. I ask her if she remembers their childhood. I ask her if she remembers Sarah taking care of her. She stays silent. I tell her that she didn't just take her sister's husband. She took her sister's peace. She took the safety of the family home. She turned Sarah's life into a crime scene. I tell her that one day she's going to need someone. One day life is going to knock her down and she's going to look around for the one person who always had her back. And that person isn't going to be there. Sarah's going to be gone, and it'll be because Jessica pushed her away for the sake of a man who isn't worth the dirt on her shoes. The weight of the moral judgment in the room is heavy. It's not about the law. Mark hasn't broken a statute that would put him in a cell, but he's broken a law that's much older and much more important. He's broken the law of human decency. I tell him that he has no honor. I tell him that he has no shame. And in my book, that makes him a very dangerous person. If you can do this to the person you promised to love and cherish, you can do anything to anyone. I wouldn't trust Mark to walk my dog, let alone be a part of a family. I look at Sarah, who is finally starting to stop shaking. She's looking at the two of them, and for the first time today, she isn't looking at them with love or even with pain. She's looking at them with realization. She's seeing them for the small, pathetic people they are. That's the moment of victory. It's not a happy victory, but it's a necessary one. I tell my security guys to take Mark and Jessica off the stage. I don't want them to have another word. I don't want them to have another second of airtime to try and justify their sickness. As they walk off, the audience boos them with a roar that shakes the walls. Mark tries to do a little wave, trying to act like he's the bad boy who doesn't care, but I can see his shoulders slumped. He knows. He knows he's been exposed. He knows that everyone in his life is going to see this and know exactly what kind of man he is. He can't hide anymore. Jessica follows him, looking like she's trying to disappear into her own skin. They leave, and for the first time since the show started, the stage feels clean again. I sit down next to Sarah. I don't do the talk show hosting, where I just offer a tissue and a fake smile. I look at her man to man, human to human. I tell her, Sarah, this is the hardest day of your life, but it's also the first day of the rest of your life. You're free. She asks me how she's supposed to trust anyone again. It's a fair question. I tell her that she shouldn't try to trust anyone right now. She should focus on trusting herself. She suspected something was wrong, and she was right. Her instincts were perfect. Her heart was in the right place. She just gave it to the wrong people. I tell her that there are good men out there, men who would never dream of doing this, and there are sisters out there who would die for each other. She just happened to be related to one of the bad ones and married to another. The studio is quiet now, the adrenaline is fading, and the reality is setting in. This is phase 6, the echo. It's that feeling after a storm has passed where everything is still wet and broken, but the wind has stopped blowing. I look at the empty chairs where the two of them were sitting, and I feel a profound sense of waste. All that time, all those years, all that energy spent on a lie. For what? For a few months of a secret affair? It's so small, it's so insignificant compared to what they threw away. I've seen this echo in 100 different cases. It's the silence of a house after a divorce. It's the silence of a funeral. It's the silence of a truth that no one wanted to hear, but everyone needed to know. I look at the camera and I talk directly to the people at home. I tell them that if they're going through something like this, don't let the liars win. Don't let them make you feel like you're the one who's crazy. The truth is a powerful thing, And even when it hurts, it's better than living in a lie. I tell them that loyalty matters. I tell them that family should mean something. And if it doesn't, you find a new family, you find the people who will actually stand by you. I look at Sarah one last time and I give her a nod. She's going to be okay. It'll take time, but she's got a strength in her that Mark and Jessica will never understand. She's a survivor. The lights begin to dim and I walk off the stage. My heart is still heavy, but my mind is clear. I did my job today. I pulled the mask off a monster and I gave a victim her voice back. As I walk toward my dressing room, I think about Sarah and I hope she finds the peace she deserves. I think about Mark and Jessica and I hope they get exactly what's coming to them. Life has a way of balancing the scales, and I have a feeling those two are going to be paying for today for a very long time. It's not about vengeance, it's about consequences. And on the show, consequences are the only thing that's guaranteed. If you're living a lie, eventually the truth is going to find you. And when it does, I'll be there.